Breaking news. Ukraine destroys Russian motorbike assaults. It is Tuesday, January 27, 2026, and reports are just flooding in about a massive failed tactical gamble by Russian forces.
It's pretty incredible what we're seeing.
We're getting confirmation of just a catastrophic defeat for a Russian motorized column. The scale of this failure, I mean, it's staggering.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports.
I'm Alex. Join me with Arya in the latest podcast by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover a shift in warfare that sounds like something out of a dystopian novel, but it's the grim reality on the ground right now.
It really does sound like fiction, you're right. But the footage that we're seeing from the front lines, especially around this so-called Pokrovsk massacre, it paints a very real, very chaotic picture.
We are talking about how one of the world's largest armies has been forced to trade its heavy tanks for dirt bikes, Chinese-made motorcycles.
Yeah.
And they're sending soldiers into these kill zones practically unprotected. We're going to get into the dead zone that's redefining this war, the one-timers.
The soldiers who aren't expected to come back.
Exactly. And crucially, how Ukrainian innovation is just dismantling this entire strategy piece by piece.
And we really need to dig into the why. We have reports from the Institute for the Study of War, from Militarny, even leaked documents from inside the Russian military. It's a story of desperation meeting high-tech defense.
So let's unpack this, because when I think of the Russian army, I think of tanks, heavy armor, tracks. That's the image, right?
It always has been.
But looking at the footage from this week, from January 2026, I'm seeing buggies and motorcycles. What on earth is going on?
To understand the bike, you first have to understand the tank, or I guess the lack of them. Since the start of this invasion, Russia has lost approximately 20,000 units of equipment.
20,000.
That number comes from analysts who visually confirm every single loss. It's just a staggering amount of metal to leave behind.
It's hard to even wrap your head around a number that big. That's more than the entire active inventory of most major European armies combined.
It is, and the critical part isn't just the loss, it's the replacement rate. The conflict intelligence team, CIT, they've crunched the numbers. Russia has ramped up its industry. Yes, they're running factories 247, but the best estimates, they can produce or refurbish maybe 300 T-90M tanks a year.
Okay, 300 sounds like a lot until you look at the burn rate.
Exactly. Between 2022 and 2024, they were losing tanks at a rate of roughly 1,000 per year.
So they're losing them 3 times faster than they can build them.
Right. You just can't fix that kind of deficit with propaganda. By late 2024, we saw them scraping the absolute bottom of the barrel, pulling ancient holes out of storage, things from the 50s and 60s.
Wow.
But even those Soviet-era stockpiles are finite. So they faced a choice. Either stop attacking and save what little armor you have left, or, well, find something else to drive.
And that something else is a motorcycle.
It's a classic case of tactical regression. From T-90s to civilian cars, ATVs, and these Chinese desert cross motorcycles. It looks absurd, like some kind of chaotic biker gang, but they are trying to institutionalize it. This isn't just a few rogue units.
I saw a mention of something called SVOD. It sounds like they're trying to put a high-tech gloss on a very, very low-tech solution.
That's a great way to put it. The Russian defense minister, Andrei Belousov, he mentioned it. It's supposedly an AI situational awareness system to coordinate these swarm tactics.
So the idea is that an AI can turn this chaos into a strategy.
Essentially, they're trying to sell the idea that this is a choice, not a necessity. But, as we've seen this week, an AI doesn't stop shrapnel. An algorithm can't protect you from a cluster munition.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. It's not just that they ran out of tanks. It's that the battlefield has changed so much that even if they had them, they might not work anymore. We keep hearing about this dead zone.
This is the defining feature of the war now, in 2025 and 2026. The dead zone is roughly a 15-kilometer corridor from the front line. And in this zone, the battlefield is basically transparent.
Transparent, as in there's nowhere to hide?
Zero cover. Between satellites and the constant 247 loitering of Ukrainian surveillance drones, if you move, you are seen. And if you're seen, you're hit.
And a tank is not exactly subtle.
Not at all. It's loud. It kicks up a massive dust cloud, huge heat signature. In the dead zone, a tank is just a slow-moving, multi-million-dollar billboard saying, "Shoot me."
And for Russia, that's an economic disaster.
It's a terrible trade. A Ukrainian FPV drone costs, what, $500, maybe $1,000? A T-90 tank is millions. Ukraine wins that exchange every single time.
So the tank is basically obsolete in that zone.
For a breakthrough, yes, it just can't survive long enough to reach the trench. So the Russian logic, and it's a grim, cynical logic, it shifted. You can't survive a hit, don't get hit. Try speed instead.
Hence the motorcycles. Faster, smaller, harder to spot.
That's the theory. A motorbike is small, lower thermal signature than a tank engine, and it's fast. The idea is to just sprint through that 15-kilometer dead zone before the Ukrainian drone operators can lock on. They're betting on velocity over protection.
And there's a cost calculation there, too. Trading a drone for a tank is a win for Ukraine, but for a cheap dirt bike.
That was the Russian hope. They call it the value gap. They assumed Ukraine wouldn't want to waste a valuable drone on a $2,000 Chinese motorcycle. They thought they could swarm the field with cheap targets, force Ukraine to run out of ammo, or just hesitate.
Spoiler alert, Ukraine did not hesitate. But before we get to that, let's talk about the doctrine itself. They actually gave this a name, didn't they?
They did. The official name is Run, Stab, Escape.
Run, stab, escape. Sounds less like military doctrine and more like instructions for a back alley mugging.
It's brutally descriptive, though. The run is the sprint through the dead zone on the bikes. The stab is dismounting right at the Ukrainian trench line for close-quarters combat.
And the escape.
Well, that part is mostly theoretical. Looking at the survival rates, the escape phase doesn't seem to happen very often.
So walk us through it. What does a typical assault look like?
You're seeing columns of maybe 6 to 8 motorcycles, that we've seen these massive assaults with nearly 100 at once. 2 men per bike, a driver and a gunner.
And I read a detail about the riders that, I mean, it's just chilling. It shows the level of conditioning.
You're probably thinking of the redundancy protocol. A Ukrainian National Guard service member reported this. The training is specific. If the driver is shot, the gunner on the back is instructed to immediately grab the handlebars and keep the bike moving forward.
That's insane. You're holding onto a guy, he gets killed, and your first instinct has to be to steer the corpse forward.
It is desperation codified into a procedure. They also try to protect these columns with electronic warfare, EW. They call it the electronic envelope. They'll strap portable jammers to the lead and rear bikes, trying to create a bubble of static to scramble the drone signals.
Does that work?
Sometimes, for a few minutes. But the issue is power. A tank can power a huge jammer. A dirt bike just has a small battery, so the bubble is weak, and Ukraine adapts frequencies very quickly.
And the scale of this is huge.
It is. Russia modernized over 200 training centers just for this. We have reports they purchased up to 200,000 motorcycles, mostly from China, to equip half their infantry.
200,000 motorcycles. A literal biker army. But the human cost, being on a motorcycle in a war zone, the casualty numbers must be horrific.
They are catastrophic. We need to be clear about this. In a tank, you have armor. You might survive a hit. On a bike, you are completely exposed to shrapnel, bullets, blast waves. The killed in action to wounded in action ratio is, it's startling. It's 1 to 1.3.
And for context, a normal ratio would be what? Many more wounded than killed, right?
Right. Historically, it's 1 to 3, maybe 1 to 4. A 1 to 1.3 ratio means that if you get hit, you are almost certainly dying. They're suicide missions, essentially. The Ukrainian defenders even have a name for these soldiers. They call them one-timers.
Because they only make the trip once.
That's the implication. And the Russian soldiers know it. We're seeing reports of massive corruption because of this fear. Soldiers paying bribes, 30 to 70,000 rubles, to their commanders just to avoid being assigned to a motorcycle assault.
They're paying to stay in a trench because they know the bike is a death sentence.
It's a grim economy of survival. And we have data to back this up. The I Want to Live project released some leaked documents that showed over 280,000 Russian casualties between just January and August of 2025. A huge part of that was driven by these meat assaults on wheels, especially around Pokrovsk.
So, on the other side of this, what does it mean for the defenders? How is Ukraine stopping these waves of fast, small targets?
This is where the Ukrainian innovation is just brilliant. They looked at Russia's value gap math and they just changed the equation. The key tactic is called the drone carousel.
The drone carousel. It sounds almost playful.
But it's deadly efficient. The 14th Brigade, Chervona Kalina, and others pioneered it. Instead of only launching a drone when they see a target, they operate in shifts. They keep drones hovering over key sectors 24/7. As one drone's battery gets low, another one is already flying in to replace it.
So there's never a gap in coverage. There's never a safe moment to make that run.
Always an eye in the sky. And they aren't just watching. They're armed with FPV drones and cluster munitions. See, a bike might be fast, but it has zero protection from shrapnel. A cluster munition doesn't need a direct hit. One airburst can take out an entire squad of riders.
And what about the cost? Did Russia's economic gamble pay off at all?
Not a bit. And this is a huge victory for Ukrainian industry and their European partners. In 2024 alone, Ukraine produced around 4 million drones.
4 million.
When you have that many, you don't need to be precious with them. You can absolutely afford to spend a $500 drone to stop a motorcycle. Ukraine completely nullified the value gap by simply outproducing the threat.
Which brings us back to the news we started with. Pokrovsk. This area is the epicenter of these battles.
It is. You have to look back to April 2025 to what's now called the Pokrovsk massacre. Russia tried a massive push. Nearly 100 motorcycles and 20 armored vehicles in one coordinated assault.
100 bikes. That's like a swarm of locusts.
And it was wiped out. In a matter of hours, 96 motorcycles destroyed, 21 armored vehicles lost, roughly 200 Russian soldiers killed. It was a turkey shoot for the drone operators running that carousel.
And yet here we are in January 2026, and they're doing it again.
They're repeating the exact same mistake. The reports from yesterday and today, January 27th, they show another massive failure near Pokrovsk and Dobropilya. But here is the really grotesque detail. The new Russian convoys are getting stuck in the wreckage of their previous failed assaults.
Wait, you mean literally stuck?
Yeah.
Jammed by their own destroyed bikes?
Literally. The fields are so littered with burnt-out motorcycles and debris from the 2025 attacks that the new bikes can't navigate the terrain. They have to slow down, and the moment they slow down, the drones get them.
That is a horrifying image. The past failures are physically blocking the present attempts.
It is. But the big takeaway is this. Despite 21 months of trying, despite trading thousands of lives for meters of ground, Russia has failed to take Pokrovsk. Ukrainian resilience and this drone carousel are holding the line.
So if we zoom out, what does this all mean? We have a supposed superpower on dirt bikes, rampant bribery, and a tactical regression that's just unprecedented.
I think we're looking at an army that has optimized itself for positional warfare, but at a terrible, terrible cost. They've accepted they can't maneuver anymore, they can only grind. They've traded professional mechanized warfare for high speed, high casualty chaos.
And they're just hoping Ukraine will crack under the pressure.
That seems to be the hope. But it ignores the technological reality. Ukraine is fighting a war of precision and systems. The Russian strategy relies on Ukraine running out of drones, but with their domestic production and European support, that's just not happening.
It really highlights a difference in philosophy. One side throws bodies into the grinder, the other builds a smarter machine to stop it.
Exactly. And it raises a really important question about sustainability. I mean, how long can an army sustain a 1-to-1 kill ratio? How long can you find soldiers willing to go on a one-way trip on a motorbike?
And that's the question I want to leave with you, our listeners, today. We often hear about Russia's limitless resources. But if a superpower is forced to rely on dirt bikes and bribes to move its infantry, how stable is that military, really? If the only way to advance is to die, how long can that reality sustain itself against a technologically superior defense? It's something to really think about as we watch the news coming out of Pokrovsk this week.
It certainly is. The facade of invincibility cracks a little more with every motorcycle that doesn't make it across the dead zone.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Aria, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry.
Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.